Yeah, Charlotte drugged me out of my studio. I try and get out of my studio as little as possible. If I don't leave the studio, I'm not irritated by anybody. They're not irritated by me. I mean, this is win-win here. But I'm happy to be able to talk to people and share about something which literally is becoming a lost art with the advent of digital. It's just made people stupider as far as visually. I mean, you guys are going like this, and I would imagine you guys are probably more traditional than I am, but I've had to be cutting edge my whole career. It's been a long time since I have actually drawn anything traditionally, because everything I have had to do for many years has been digital. So I do all of my drawings. I've got a 4-foot Cintiq that we draw on, but it's finally changing. The millennials generation and the people at Comic-Con, they want something handmade. They want something that is one of a kind, and they don't want something that's mass produced. So I've become ridiculously popular again. I mean, suddenly I'm finding people, there's now a fans of Roger Motzkus Facebook site, and it's like, wow, that's interesting how that showed up. So I don't know what you guys want to hear. I am happy to talk about anything. I have talked to just about any level. I would prefer that you guys ask a lot of questions. So please, you're not interrupting me. Whatever is interesting to you is interesting to me.
Tell us how you used to do it versus digitally.
I was happy to go through that, and that's why I brought this up, because I don't know how much of my artwork you want to see. If you guys start falling asleep, then I'll start clicking quicker. But this is what I did in high school.
You're standing in front of it though.
I have always liked the airbrush. It's does anybody not know what an airbrush is? Cool. Okay. Well, essentially, think of you know how you do spray painting? It's just really, really, really controlled. I can write with an airbrush by spraying paint, which is how I work. So this, essentially what it is you have to use stencils to create to leave an area open, and then you spray that area, and then you take the stencil off. So this is pretty obvious. I would have to cut a stencil for the Coca-Cola part, and then I'd spray red, and then you'd pull the stencil off. Think of it as like clear tape, where you'd cut it and then you'd pull it off. So that's effectively how it works. And I just was always drawn to that tool. I have never been very good at using a brush, a paintbrush. I've always liked drawing though, so I was just kind of figuring it out how to make it work until in the 80s somebody finally figured out how to make it work, and I've been imitating him ever since. So I'll just run through. This was a college piece actually. I still hadn't quite figured out whether I wanted to draw or whether I wanted to use an airbrush. So I was kind of mixing in between. I'm not a very good designer, but and the people that use airbrush exclusively are better designers than I am. And
What sizes are these originally?
these are probably this big, not very, but they're pretty much what I do is I don't want to draw a head any bigger than this. So that is that big because those heads were that big and she needed to be this big. But you know, this was very comfortable in size. I've done everything. It's one of the reasons why my career lasted longer than many, is because what I'd like to focus on is if you can learn to draw realistically, you can draw anything. And when some people say, well, I'm really good at landscapes, but I'm not very good at people, I'd say, then you're probably not as good at landscapes as you think, because a tree is a cone. A house is a square. I mean, it's all the same thing. And whether I'm doing a murderous monster destroying a city, or a cover for the new magazine, it's the same thing for me. So my career has gone over a number of directions.
For this one, or the one over there, the blue one, how did you start and how is it made to look like it looks?
How is it made physically or the process? Because that's,
Both?
okay. I was planning on talking about the light aspect of it. But physically, I do a drawing. It's mostly charcoal and, or colored pencil. And I will do I think I can probably use good language for you guys, or artistic language. Essentially, I put in the darks with a charcoal pencil, and I will do the halftones with a colored pencil, and then I spray acrylic paint transparently on top of that. So essentially, I work the same way the old masters do, where they would start with a black and white or gray tone, and then they would start glazing colors on top of it. It's really the same thing for me. And then I'll have the local color, and then I will do the highlights. So essentially, I start with the darks, then I do the mid-tones, and then I go back and forth with pencil or paint from that. Is that good enough language? But how did I do that?
When you say spray, you mean with the airbrush?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And how to pull it off is another story. I'll save that a little bit. And yeah, how do you pull that off? That was a fun and unique story.
Did you use models for your painting?
Yes. And when you get a call and somebody says, okay, I need a Down syndrome 16-year-old highly functional boy, a lot of people will draw out of their head, and it shows it. The people that paint well out of their head are few and far between. So I like to shoot models because I like to draw from life, and it's just better. Because if people that draw out of their head, something like a folds in the clothing, it's going to be pretty standardized. It's going to look very statuesque. For me, I have no idea what I'm going to get when I get somebody in front of a photograph. I want that. Because sometimes, if I've got a 7-year-old kid who's just bouncing off the walls, and it's like, please, parents, will you stop giving this kid caffeine? I may get some wonderful stuff I've never thought of before. So I will go to the ends of what I have to. If I need a Down syndrome boy, and I did do that in LA, and I found 2 of them in about 4 hours. Then this one here, it was like, oh geez, I need a supermodel. You don't call the Relief Society president and say, I need a supermodel figure that's willing to be practically naked. So I called my yoga instructor. I said, I need somebody who's as strong as you possibly can. She needs to be fit with 0 body fat, because this is a Kelly LeBrock body double. And so she says, okay, here's a gal who owns a pole dancing studio. So you say, hi, I need to take a picture of you, and I'm wondering if you're willing to do this, and it's really not weird, I'm really trying to do this. So I went to a pole dancing studio to take pictures of her, and so it's great now, because back in the day, you'd have a roll of 36, and if I've got 3 people, I'll shoot 12 of each, because then I got to get it to the 1-hour photo 5 minutes before they close, so that I can pick it up and start the next day. Now it's not uncommon for me to take 800 photographs for something like that, and it's not just one shot. I would use a leg from one, an arm from one, a hand from another, an expression from another, and put them all together. So. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but it sounds to me like you guys are going to be pretty up to speed. So you can work pretty detailed with an airbrush. This was another college piece, but the thing that I don't like about working very realistically, and some people will say, oh, it's great, it looks just like a photograph, and I would go, then use the photograph. Who cares? I mean, it's just a skill. We want to be able to communicate something, and especially with digital. And that's what people have done. They just take a photograph, they put it in Photoshop, and use that and pay them $50. I mean, that's what caused me to not work for the better part of 10 years, because nobody was willing to pay for anything. Because if you can do a great thing in Photoshop, hire your nephew for $15 an hour. I can't do that. But it's coming back because now anybody with an afternoon in a college class can be really good at Photoshop. Now you got to be really good to be able to get the high-end stuff. And what's weird is I started off doing movie posters in LA, and then I went to advertising, and then publishing, and then editorial, and then you better get a new job. But now it's come back. Now I'm working for the movies again. I mean, these are my two most recent paintings, and they're traditional. So it's really, I'll mention more about that if you'd like. So, okay, let me get to some more recent stuff, please.
You said you made a mask.
Yes.
That's not for everything, it was just the lettering and the more clean edges.
Yes. Now I use, back in the day, I did a mask for everything. Now I do it for almost none. For example, I did no stencils for this.
Okay.
That's all freehand. And what I do is I will use this. And Charlotte's learned about this, and I'll move this so I can really control it. But with some of the new paints, you literally can do as fine as a hair with an airbrush. You can just draw with it like anything else. So this was for a fold out for PC Magazine. I guess it was porn for computer geeks. You open your computer magazine and they look at this because they want to see the new technology. And you know, I think I was off in the corner, my wife was off to the side, and you know, this was cool. I lived in LA, and they flew me out up into the Rocky Mountains somewhere and hired a guy to bring a horse in, and I just said, yes, take more pictures of the horse. I mean, it was just, back when there was money for everything, it was absolutely great. But they wanted a movie poster. Look, I did this for Sony, and so I went into Gold's Gym, and all you gotta do is go into a gym in Pasadena, and everybody will just flock because they're trying to get known. And I ended up using porn stars because they would do anything I would want. They're like, oh yeah, I'd like me to, I mean, no. Here's the costume I want you to put on. But it's hard to work with people that are bashful. And a lot of times I need to work with people that are really normal. And now, you know, they'll just kind of go, okay, no, I want you to look tough. No. Put your, back in the day, I just took pictures, but I didn't put the film in so that they could just get comfortable. And after it's like, oh wow, these are great. Let me put another roll of film in. So, I mean, anybody who's, you know, a dancer, an actor, you know, it's just like, I want you to be tough. You know, it's easier to tone somebody down than to get more out of them. Oh, this is this recent one. Oh, this was for Bill Dance. This was for, it went on billboards, sides of buses. I mean, it's really interesting to see, to go out there and see your work everywhere.
I think you said when you started that design is in your strength.
Yeah.
But isn't design all through all of this?
Yes.
And is that the first thing that you start with? And you're kind of envisioning how you want to make this look?
Yes. Well, first, what I think about is what do I want a person to feel? If I want a person to feel, it took me a long time to figure this out, because when I was in college, and there was a guy that was doing what I wanted to do, so he was a Jehovah's Witness, and he was even more of a, I don't want to talk to people than I. It took me 6 months to say, can I come to your house? So I spent a week at his house and watched him do an entire painting and learn how he did it. And he said, well, do I want a dangerous composition or a feminine composition? You know, I didn't know what that meant at the time. But now, if I want something dangerous, then I have to go to the art principles of line, shape, space, plane, texture, color, value. And I think, okay, those are the visual elements, or the principles of contrast. I mean, tell me to slow down if you need me to. I'm going to sue you guys and print this. I think, okay, if I want something to be exciting, I want contrast. So I'm going to pick colors that are strong. If I want something to be unusual, I'll pick red and green. If I want it to be magical and mysterious, I'll use purple and yellow because they're the opposites on the color wheel. Or if I want something to be calm, I'll do something in blues. So that's the first thing, is what do I want to communicate? And then because most of my work is commercial, I say, okay, who needs to be in this? What needs to be what happened in it? How much room do I have for type? And sometimes the clients will say, here's the sketch. Don't change it more than 13.5%. Anyway, so then I will do okay, here's what's in my head. Here's what'll work. What do you think? Okay. And then they will approve it and change it. And then I will go take photographs, and then I'll go, well, that was a really dumb idea, but oh, this is a really good idea. Wait a minute, this kid was so awesome. He did this thing I wasn't even expecting. So then I will use photographs to put a composition together, and then I will send that to them. And then they will say, okay, go to final. So that's my thinking. And I use old masters more than anything else. If I want something to be unusual, I'll tip it a little bit. I mean, this was Degas. You know, if you look at his little compositions of fruit, one side is higher than another on the table. It's because he's just trying to get you to look at things in a different way. So learning what tools, what visual elements will create the feeling you want, and then the client tells you what has to be there. And so it's a lot of it is negotiating as well. I don't know how to come up with my own paintings. I am a terrible fine artist. I spent 2 years trying to put a painting in a gallery. I failed epically. I mean, they never got in. I don't understand people. That's what they want to hang on their walls. To me, it's like, but I love entertainment. That's just, that is my thing. What makes things exciting? How do you make things bigger than life? You know, some people will say, oh, I just love slice of life movies. My wife is one of those. I just love Driving Miss Daisy, because it's just people that are just, they're just getting along well. And you know, me, it's like, I want to see the universe explode. I want to see a guy take off his shirt and go, come on, let's stop these aliens from taking over the whole planet. The less it has to do with reality, the better. I'm all for it. I mean, Sigourney Weaver is my favorite. What does she do? She puts on all of these guns, and I'll buy it because I don't care. It's a movie. But anyway, these are for the toys for the small soldiers that I did. So they sent me the toys, then I took pictures of the original models, and then I would say, okay, and I would use my own hand, and my kids have been painted so many times, it's like, please stop. I did a lot of young adult book covers. Those are fun because you get one and then you get 6 others, but they're all the same thing as far as I'm concerned. It's like, and we'd have gotten away with it too if it hadn't have been for you and that Scooby-Doo dog. I mean, it's all the same thing. But they say, we want to be excited, but we have to be looking at something in the background. So it's like, you get a lot of this, you know, and that's what this is. Person coming forward, exciting, but whatever's happening in the background. So you gotta learn the tricks of how to sell the stories. And then things started to get away from realism, and they wanted stuff that was more distorted. So again, because there was so much realism, we're bored, we need something else. So then we had to do something that was more than life. And it was really, really fun because for this I would use a wide angle lens. And if you ever want to be creative, I don't have to worry about being creative. Have you ever taken a fisheye lens this big and put it right up somebody's nose? It's just frightening and amazing what can happen. So, I did the very first video game cover. I am a legend in the Comic-Con world because this was one of the first games ever. And they're thinking, oh, you know this, you that, and I just go, I never played it. I still have never played this game. They send me, what they would do is that, these millennials are, because they understand everything. Well, they know the name of all of these people. Well, it's actually, he should have been wearing this, and what, these pants, they look like during the 80s, and I'm going, you don't get it. I didn't even have a platform to play this on. They sent me 8-bit faxes. I made this stuff up. And then I go hire somebody, and this guy, the guy in the middle was a porn star, and the big guys, again, in Pasadena, he was a 6'11" East German professional wrestler. And it was just, so I stick him in a pair of briefs and say, okay, you're being killed. That's fun for me. Go get that. But anyway, this was an artist friend for Ice House. So, to me, this is the same thing. I'm still drawing a person. And this was I think this was for the ensign. You can't get farther apart than that. You've got murderous, crazy, beer to me, they're all people. I don't care. It's all the same thing. It's all telling a story. But how can I make it more than just a photograph? That's always a huge, huge part of what I do. I did again, more small soldiers' toys. This was a new one for the Matrix. I've been trying to break into this. These are private collectors that for a lot of boomers, what's nostalgic is the Western and the Cowboys and Indians themes. If you're a millennial, what is nostalgic to you are pop movies between 1996 and 1982. They just love that stuff. So I wanted to get into breaking into those markets, and I did this for that, just as a portfolio piece. And I watched this was for 3 movies, so I watched 3 movies, a frame at a time, 26 frames a second, and then I would do frame grabs. It took me 3 days just to get the information or the reference material. And then part of it is, I love the movie, what do I want to do? Sometimes I have to collect the reference first and go, what can I do with this? Other times it's like, what do I want to do? Oh yeah, I want this girl coming out of the doorway because that's what that movie was about. So you've really got to be flexible. If somebody says, come up with something you love, I'm kind of sitting there going, I don't know, what do you want me to paint?
So is this digital or airbrush?
This is traditional. This is traditional. You can't tell the difference between my traditional and my digital stuff. Because what I did, to get into that, is my career kind of ended because I didn't get into digital soon enough. I don't know how people did it. It didn't make any sense to me, and nothing that was happening I liked. But it wasn't until Photoshop got to a point where I could make Photoshop do what I wanted because I could create my own brushes. So what I did is I sampled the tools, or I would draw on it like a Prismacolor, and then I would sample that and create a brush. And once Photoshop got to the point where I could do that, I tried it with digital, and I never went back because it's just got to be so fast. Anything commercial, I turned an album cover down because just 2 days ago because they wanted it in 11 days, which is great if you don't have a life. But now I teach school and I've got other things, because in order to make this stuff happen, it's not uncommon that you get a call. When I was in LA, that somebody in Hollywood would call, and I'd pick up the phone at 10:30, and they'd say, "How soon can you get in here?" I'm 45 minutes away. Okay, we want you half an hour sooner. They'd say, here's what we want you to do. I need sketches by 4:30, and then I need the final by the next morning. So you literally, you get the job, you didn't sleep. When the job was done, you slept for a couple of days. I mean, that's just, that is what the movies were like. It is absolutely insane. I recommend it for no one. It's the funnest thing you can do, though. Anyway, so this was completely traditional. This was another golf porn. You buy a golf magazine and you unfold Tiger Woods. This was me. I rented a tux and went like this. And they sent me a picture of Tiger, and that's this one here. This was for another video game that I never played. Last week, somebody in Russian Siberia sent me an email saying my dad loved to play this game. It was his favorite game. And can I get a poster? I mean, Russian Siberia, are you kidding me? It's just so weird. These people know more about me than I do. I Googled myself and it was like, oh, that's what happened. I had no idea that, I mean, they're just so into this. They just,
Do you sell the posters?
I do, yeah. It's not a moneymaker for me. It's just I do it because it's what they want. But now they're collectors groups. The people that bought both of these, there's 700 guys, and they're mostly guys, and they decide what do we want a poster done, what artist we going to use. So they pay me to do the original piece, and then I send them the digital file. Then they make prints of that and sell a limited number of prints, like 50. So what that does is it keeps the licensing people off their back because you're not marketing it to anyone. And it's all private. You can't find any of this because it's all private. And then they will send me some prints that I will sign, and I can charge twice as much for those because I signed them. But, and that's why they invented this Fans of Roger Motzkus, so that they can sign it. And once, we're gonna have this painting done, and at 10 p.m. on a given day, the first 50 people that sign up for it get it. I mean, it's just really kind of weird but fun how they do that, but that's how it works now. Anyway, that Twister. Yeah, this was when things really started getting weird. Back in the day, artists were really respected, and people went to artists that were really good at one thing. But once it started transferring over to digital, it just became terrible, because you had young people that didn't know how to draw, that knew how to use Photoshop really well, telling you what to do. And because you could make changes in seconds, the company owners thought, oh, well, it won't take very long. But everybody started, this was after Y2K, and everybody started getting out of it because you couldn't make any money. There were like 5 guys at my level in the country, and we'd say, James, I got called for the Twister, and he'd go, yeah, I did too. I did the rough for it. He said, I know, I did the final. It was horrible. So they did that so that they didn't have to pay as much. But if you look at the original one that was printed, it was of a guy whose head was totally whacked out, and it was because the client had approved a photograph of a model from a model book. So he had to draw that head and paste it on on the model. It just got really weird. And by the time 2008 came, nobody was working. Nobody was working anymore. Everybody went into video games. I went into teaching. But now within the last few years, millennials are going, wow, art's really terrible now. Everything being produced is just awful. I can make a movie on my laptop. And so they're going backwards. They're going, oh my gosh, this stuff that was done in the 80s, It was amazing. So now they're hiring guys that are old because we know how to draw stuff originally, and young guys are learning how to paint traditionally because they never learned anything other than digital. It's really interesting because what happens is the people who've got the most money are the movie people. So that is where the genesis of things are. And when I started teaching at Slick, I started having movie students come in, and I'd say, why are you learning something that nobody does anymore? And they said, because now, if you want to do something original, it's got to be practical, meaning you got to make it by hand, because you can do anything with the computer now. You can go on there and say, give me an illustration of a gorilla running from James Bond with a Disney and aliens in the background, and you'll find it. But, okay, you don't make any money getting this stuff on the internet. You don't make movies. It's got to be totally new. So now you get weirdos like me that stay in their basement and think things up. Oh, anyway, this was what I mentioned when you get a right angle lens and put it up their nose, and she was delightful to work with. I like working with people. All right. Enough about me. So Charlotte asked me to give the presentation that I gave a couple of years ago about FanX, and it was how to draw and paint realistically. And you guys will probably know much of this, but this will give some very specifics about how I work. Okay, let's make this size. Where that is. You've seen all of that. This is a borrowed laptop. I don't use laptops because I can't use them for anything. Does anybody know how to see the button to maximize this? To go full screen.
Yeah, well, usually it's up there between the X and the dash is usually where your screen
This?
control is. Good.
I'm not sure if PDF does the same thing that a slide does, like go into show mode. That may be the biggest you can do.
I wonder if it's the, anyway, this was just showing people what I did. So, how, you've got to understand form, how light falls on form, and you have to collect reference material, props, and use photos. There's a way to expand this, but I can't.
It's big on the screen.
Can you, now is this PowerPoint?
This is, I just put it into a PDF,
Ah, okay.
but I can't. That must be a different browser. Okay, no, we'll just work through it. So, form. This is a great word if you ever want to beat somebody in word games. Chiaroscuro, so it's light and dark. An effect of contrasted light and shadow created by light falling unevenly or from a particular direction on something. So this looks realistic, but what is interesting is this is just being it's being lost, because so much of what is going on is people just going on the internet and getting something digitally, and that's it. And this is what is so big in people's minds now. And this is not form, this is shape. And it's contour lines. As you can see, there are lines going around everything. And it's shaped. But there's a hint of form, but it's really not. And this is all most are understand. And what was interesting is, after the Comic-Con, some gal came up to me, there was a line of people. And one gal said, I just got my degree in art. I didn't learn what I needed. What I needed was what you just talked about. It's being missed that, and the kids at SLIP where I teach, I've gone to the dean and said, these kids, they don't get this. They've taken photography classes, but they don't understand to use it to create better artwork. It's really stunning. So this is to give a better example of what shape is, and what many artists will do is this. See, there's no shape, or there's no form there, and there's a complete lack of understanding of color. This is what I would call a plate of spaghetti composition. It's just everything is the same everywhere with noodles all over the place. And this is what most understand. They don't know how to paint realistically at all. And I show this because this is really popular too. And it might be pretty and it might be decorative, so I just, for giggles, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go into Photoshop and I'm gonna desaturate it. That's hideous. But unless you're educated to know better, this is what you get. They don't know any better. So, and I teach a drawing classes this semester, and so I kind of start things and get more and more complex as I go along.
Could you slide this slide down just a little so I can still get the title? There you go.
So in order to have form, you have light side and shadow side, and this is a 30,000 foot view that I show to people and then let them ask more questions. Essentially, I take a whole semester teaching this stuff. So light side, shadow side, and edges. That's the main thing. I think if I've got that here is, so you've got light side, shadow side, and then what's next is the edges. So you've got soft edge, hard edge, lost edge, hard or soft edge, and so much is lost here. Trying to get students to lose an edge is just where the shadow side just kind of disappears into the background. I mean, I'm about ready to strangle some necks. It's like they can't do it. I have to have an outline around everything. And so, this is a funny story. So what I did for one is I put this bear model up, and I made the room completely dark. And I put one light off to one side, and one of the things that I say is draw what you see, not what you think you know. And so there was this collar on the side of this bear that was completely black, so you couldn't see it, but he drew it. And I said, why did you draw that collar? He says, because I know it's there. And I says, can you see it? Well, no. Well, then why did you draw it? I'm teaching you how to draw from observation. He transferred out. He couldn't get his head wrapped around it. So my mind goes a million miles an hour. So, and I say a lot of stupid things. My wife is usually the translator. I'm a yoga teacher, and I will say things like, take your left head and move it up towards the ground, because when my wife will say, this is what he really meant. So if I say something really stupid, say, what? And I'll back up. So anyway. So you guys should know this. I would imagine highlight, light, shadow, foreshadow, reflected light. But these kids at Comic-Con were going, I've never heard this before.
Never.
Never. No, they're
That's basic.
teaching them how to use programs. They're not, and the programs will do the thinking for you. It's like, okay, make killer illustration, collect scrap, make it look like a watercolor, and click. I mean, this
They
is
give a light direction.
well, that's the stupid thing, is, you know, you'll have one picture where the light is coming from this direction, and then the background is coming from the other direction, and I'm going, and other people are like, what? This is how stupid, I'm sorry, well, I don't mean to be unkind, but my son, he works with autistic kids as a therapist, and he says, I'd rather work with autistic kids because they've been diagnosed. And he just got a wedding invitation. He says, Dad, these guys are they're not gonna make it. I said, what's wrong with this? There was no date. No date. I mean, the connectivity is just being lost. So, what I would point out here is, as I would say, if you can't draw a cylinder, then you can't draw a leg. And I would say here, this is basically a square. This is a sphere, and I try and help students see that you to be able to see the basic shapes in everything, which is essentially what we are doing. And sometimes I start out by saying, draw what you see, not what you think you know. But by the end of the semester, I say, then you draw what you understand. So that's when you can start adding and improving rather than just copying photographs in real life to whatever degree. So, you know, this artist understands what a sphere is like, or what a square is like. And there are choices. So you have a choice. If you're going to draw a male and you want it to look masculine, well, let me ask you guys, who can see the difference in these two and why I brought the examples up? Go ahead.
More angular features on male.
Yeah.
And softer on the female.
Yeah, there you go. My next painting is going to be of Conan the Barbarian. This guy's going to be as chiseled as I can possibly make him, because that's what communicates. And women are softer, they're squishier, they're nicer, they're comfortable, and guys are sharp and edgy and pointed and harmful, and takes one to know one. So anyway, so you have some choices. Look at the different nose. One nose is circular, one nose is angular. That's when you can start, when you understand form, then you can draw what you understand more and communicate more. And this is I typically will use 3 lights, a main light, a fill light, and then what we call a key light, which is something from behind, because typically in the movies you've got this bright, beautiful light that highlights everything. And so this is my basic light setting, and this is what I used for 15 years. Basically, I was working in everything from strip clubs to the poorest, smallest homes you could possibly get in. So if I couldn't get it on the back of my bike, I didn't use it. So this has got different lights, and I'll show you some about the different qualities about that. But so this is just to give you an example of how I would work. So I had to get a kid that looked big, buff, muscular, and I had to find somebody who had guns, and you can see how I changed it and how I had to recreate it. You know, some stuff I have to make up, other stuff you can see is pretty dang realistic. And I'm just drawing what I see.
Let me ask you a question. How did you ever get that background so wide and then you showed it so realized you got this background boom?
Yeah, it's,
It's totally, it's different. There's 3 light sources, you said?
yeah. You kind of figure out what works and what doesn't, because let me show you, because how to use light is a big deal. And the obvious example, which, oh my gosh, it's okay, I didn't need any retinas anyway, is light also tells a story, you know, and the placement of light. You know, but if I'm going like this, I don't know what you're, can't see what I'm looking at, but can you see how harsh the shadows are? That's ugly. But I like everything I see is completely blurred out. But I learn what works and what kind of angles, but and how soft. Oh, this works. So if I need to have a lot of light because I've got a dark background, then I'm gonna set up a sheet to reflect that. But if I really need to have it pop, so you have to, you figure out what works.
I cannot see it this morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, cool.
I can see a halo around the head though.
Yeah, I should have got one that wasn't quite so bright, so anyway. Can you imagine how hard I am to live with? My kids are the most well-adjusted kids you'll ever find, because my wife would say, I can't believe you said that. And then my kids would come home, and most kids are really depressed because all these horrible things happen, and then my kids are like, Dad taught me that. Big deal. My oldest son's he's getting his doctorate in therapy. And his friends are saying, you need to work on your dad. So anyway, these are the 2 pictures that I took. So here's a good example here. See, the light here is low because I want it to be mean and angry. So the light is coming off to the side, and off to the side is going to be awkward and unusual. Why would you ever light anyone from the side? Never. But, you know, these are murderous creatures. But I had another light that was way up here that just hit these edges. So I lost this completely. Same thing here. Big light up here, 2 sides. I mean, this is not how you want to do a portrait. But the fact that this face is lost and you're just seeing parts of it, but very different than this, for example. You know, flashbulb right in the front. You know, because and from above, I want it to be happy. So, and that was the main point, is how to use light to be able to tell the story. And so if you can see these 2 guys here, is this guy and this guy. And I just drew close. And Norman Rockwell was manic about this. He was one of the most well-paid people in the country. Back in the turn of the last century, the most famous, the rock stars and the movie stars, there were no movie stars, there were no rock stars. It was the people doing art. So he had this constructed in his studio. If he needed to do a fisherman, he would pay somebody to take a boat apart, put it into his studio, and reassemble it in his studio so that he could get exactly the light that he wanted. And I would say, well, you had a month to do it. do the same thing in 4 days, Norman, and then let's have a conversation. But I think that's good this is really helpful to show what he did, which was so much more than the photograph. He made more of the characters. I mean, this is what I call a transporter accident. If anybody could do that, they would have to run quickly to the hospital because you don't bend like that. But it's what works within the composition.
Oh, yeah.
How many lights is he using in here?
How many what?
Lights. Where's he got, where's the light? What's he doing? Is it from home?
It looks like it's, well, my guess is it's very large. It's probably one of those, yeah, it's probably, he's got a really bright light with a diffuser that's probably about the size of a car, is what I would get. And if you've got the money for that, man, would I love to have that. With me, you gotta fake it. But this, see, it's dangerous, it's uncomfortable, it's deer in the headlights on this one over here. So he would have done this, what I had. Nothing flattering, the shadows are harsh, and shooting animals. Hard. I'm so grateful for digital. There was one dog, I needed to, it was a post office thing, and the dog liked grapes. So the owners would put his feet up, and the dog would say, "Can I go crap on the floor right now?" And then I'd roll a grape at it one at a time, and the grape, and he'd go. And then I'd take a few pictures, and then the dog would want to go do things dogs do, and then put it back up, roll another grape, take a few pictures, and you do that until you get what you need. So it really is kind of brain damaged, but when you're done, it's like, oh, that was really fun. That was really cool. And this is contemporary of a guy that's working now, who would, just an example of what he would start with and what he'd end up with. And that's about the level that I would work as well. So anyway, that was the end of that presentation. The presentation that I did this year, and I'll just tell you because you guys are smart enough to know better, is how to be a successful artist, and do you need to go to school to learn it? So I called the 4 best guys that I knew to be on a panel with me, and I said, answer these questions. They said the same thing. I mean, these are all national level artists, not hobbyists. It's like this is their job, and people across the country know who they are. And you can, the short answer is you can go to school to learn about the visual elements, how to paint in different ways. These days, you can say, teach me how to do on watercolor class. Pay $100 and they'll give you a 6-week course. You could figure it out that way. So I was the only guy that graduated of those 4 guys. They all did, and most of them were like, well, I started out in school and realized I'm not learning what I need to learn. So they quit, went to LA, started making money. But what we don't learn in school is the business aspect and the character aspect. My students, if I have a class of 20 kids, 3 will show up to the first day of class, and I will never see again. And about 8 more will kind of, by mid-semester, I'm down to about 11 kids. And last semester I had 3. They just quit coming. And that's not gonna get the job done. In order to make it in the arts, the artists that I went to see in California, if it was a choice between food and paint, he bought paint. It was not uncommon that he would be in the hospital for malnutrition. He worked over a strip club on Hollywood Boulevard. The guy didn't sleep much, and he was just phenomenal. He stayed there and painted. So things like diligence, perseverance. Any wise person would have got a real job long ago. I mean, things just really died for me in 2008, and I did everything, including washing windows and teaching college, whatever I could do. But I kept doing this, and 6 months ago, nobody had heard of me. Now I've got a fan club. So persistence. You just got to get better and better and better and better, and you need to find your niche. There is a gourd society in Georgia. If you like gourds, you need to go to Georgia. If you like Jesus, come here. They sell tons of Greg Olson prints. But some good advice that I got for, how many of you know Bill Whitaker? So he gave me some of the best advice I had ever given, because when I was trying to do some fine art, and so I visited his studio a number of times, and I said, you know, what do people want? And he said, I don't know. It's really hard to tell, but I can tell you what people don't want. Try and pay for the market. And that was when I moved to Utah, and I saw this and I thought, okay, maybe I gotta start doing Jesus paintings. And then I went in the then Cottonwood Mall, and I saw this portrait of Jesus, and one was like this. And then another one right next to it where he's like this. And another portrait like this. Same thing, the only thing that changed was his mouth. How many of you saw any of those? Right. He was painting for the market. But if you feel Jesus, then that people will, if you're painting what you love, then people will resonate with that. I did, the paintings that I did were for galleries, were flowers. I thought they would be decorative. I mean, people could just tell, dude, you don't even like this. This is what I like. And anyway, so that's what, but you gotta work hard. The guy that did the vampire was an artist in Pasadena. Every once in a while I'd open the door and his skin was just as green as could be, and I'd say, oh, you're in the middle of a deadline, and he'd say, I just slept in 3 days. You know, you've gotta be able to do that. It was when I had a little apartment in Pasadena, and an instructor from the Salt Lake Community College brought a group of illustration students down, and they visited a number of artists in LA that were famous, and I called him afterwards, and I said, so how'd that go? He says, Raj, 3/4 of the kids transferred. They ceased to become art majors because they didn't want to put in work. You have to absolutely love it. You have to love it, because for me, it's therapy. You know, I can't afford the therapy. I spend a month on this painting. Who does that? You know, I get up and it's like, okay, how am I going to solve this problem? I got this blob monster. Okay, what color should I use? And my wife comes home at 5:30, and the next time I see her is 12:30 at night when I come and see, are you still awake? No, she's asleep, because I'm down in the basement painting with alien movies in the background. It's just it's got to be fun. You've got to love it. If you like landscapes, great. Paint the best landscapes you possibly can. But dedication is the big deal. You got to learn about how to make money, how to get into galleries. I think the other thing is that we talked about was networking. I didn't go to FanX to make a lot of money. I got there so that I could talk to a lot of artists that go to FanX, and they would say, oh, Raj, your work's good. You're not going to make any money here. People here are really cheap, and they're here because they want to buy their favorite character. You need to go to the con in Seattle. They like big people. They've got open wallets, and you've got to learn how to do stuff. To be able to learn to do the computer, you don't learn Photoshop on your own. And to get back to what you said, I had people couldn't tell the difference when I went over, when I transferred over to digital. So I had some guys from a game company came over to say, show us how you're doing this. We don't get it. And so I showed him what I did, and the guy just, he stepped back on the chair and just said, nobody's working like that. And then he looked over at my drawing table and said, you work the way you do because you spent 30 years over there. All you did was transfer that to digital. Otherwise, you're going on YouTube and you're saying how to create this special effect or use this filter, which is great. I mean, to do this, I couldn't get a company to pick me up, so I called Right Now, which is one of the #1 guy in LA, and I said, Steve, I haven't done an illustration in over a year. And he said, what? I am turning work away. And I said, I know, I'm not in LA. Nobody wants to touch me anymore. He called one of these poster companies and said, I am too busy. I will not work for you anymore. If you call me, I will give the work to Roger because he's that good. I get a call from them because they trust him. So the point of that is networking, 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 networking. You need to go find out who is doing what you want to do. Do whatever you have to do to get into their house, to learn them. I learned more when I went to California with the artists that became my mentor in 5 days than I learned in 5 years in college. I mean, I couldn't learn to draw in a week, but just hearing how, when Hollywood would call him, how he answered the phone, how he worked specifically, and I had no idea. I was just guessing how he worked, trying to figure it out. But once I saw it and saw how he worked, I came home, and the first illustration I did, I sent in, and the client said, who are you? This works amazing. And that's when my work really jumped up. So learn as much as you can from other, groups like this. If somebody's doing something, go there. Drew Struzan. Yeah, he and Steve Chorney and I and Bob Rodriguez, we all just kind of knew each other, and I was just this young new kid on the block that they just kind of tolerated. But now they're retired, and now they have to come to me.
How do you spell that last name, Drew?
But Drew Struzan, yeah,
How does he spell it?
He's the one who gave me the poster.
Yes, yeah. And I work similarly to how he does, and guys have been trying to copy him digitally, and they can't. You can get really close. There's a kid over in London that's really good too, and he's this quick.
Do you use visual pencil?
Yes. Yeah. They're
Paintbrush too?
Yeah. I mean, and you are as welcome to come up and anything that works. So one of the difficulties with airbrush is you have a choice of 3 textures: smooth, smooth, and smooth. So, and which is great if you're trying to make a 1970s greetings card, balloons, chrome, and fire. But for this stuff, you got to do whatever you can to make some texture. So what I'll do is, this is on what they call illustration board, and I will gesso, sloppy gesso. For this, if you look close, I painted gesso all around it like this, so that the canvas has a texture. So with this, I can create whatever texture I want out of gesso. So that gives another bit of texture, but still, it's still smooth from what you put on the airbrush. So in order to make it look like I'm not trying to fix a bad airbrush painting with Prismacolor, that's why I start with pencil. And it's loose and energetic, and then when I put that on top, and I'll take a paint or a toothbrush and just start speckling paint all over, because that's what happens if you pull your airbrush back and then you let it go. You've got all of these spots all over it, and it breaks your heart. So what does a smart guy do? Do it everywhere, and then you can say, I meant to do that. So you're more than welcome to come up and look at these closely. I don't know what else you want to hear, right? You keep putting a nickel in me and I'll keep talking and I'll stop as soon as I feel the button.
What about all the originals you've done over the years? Did the clients buy them, or do you own some of them?
I own most of them, and I don't know what I'm gonna do with them, and now that I'm getting older and my kids have moved away, I think, why do I have these? My kids are just going to throw them away. I don't know what I'm going to do with them.
Got a fan club, why don't you put it up for auction?
I'm starting that, yeah, and they're gonna start collecting them, and for a lot of us, it's like, oh, this stuff is really valuable. Drew Struzan has collected everything over the years, well, now he's getting older. Go to Galactic Gallery in Austin, Texas. He sent everything over there, and he's just getting rid of them, because, the value is whoever, is whatever a person feels, but now, the value is there. I get at least once a month, somebody in the planet says, can I buy your original Dune? And it brings tear to my eyes to tell you what I sold it for back in 2008. I could auction that easily and get 40 grand, like that. So I called a guy, or a guy called me and I says, I sold it for stupid years ago. But I hadn't worked at all. Somebody offers me $1,000 for a painting when I haven't made any money that year. Yeah. But now, these gamers and collectors are like, this stuff is valuable. I want to buy it just because I know what happens. You artists are going to die and your wives are going to throw them away. So now they're starting to collect this stuff.
Happened to my mother, she worked for Warner Brothers in the cartoon department.
Yes.
Inking the original watercolor.
Yes.
I used to play with him. But, I went to a gallery, saw they were selling original Warner Brothers and Disney at $200 or $300 per sale.
Was that all?
I went back home, asked Mom where they were, she had thrown them out before.
Yes. Yeah, but that falls under the idea of networking. Who collects this stuff?
She couldn't believe anybody would pay for even a cellulose ink.
Yeah, but you gotta find those people.
I heard that Rocco would throw out some of his paintings because the job was done.
Yeah,
So he was finished.
yeah, I've got a friend of mine was the same thing. It was like, I didn't keep them, I just let the clients have them, and I'm going, oh dude, if you had that Captain Power, you could get 30 grand easily for it. You know, how the heck do you know? So I've got, stuff like this. This is my sister-in-law, this is my niece, and this, nobody's gonna hang this on their wall unless they really like how well it's done. But, so there's really no sentiment there. But people like this if they like the movies. So you gotta find the people that like what you, do. But the thing that I'm learning is, it's really about creating a feeling. I was in, I forget, one of the beach, San Luis Obispo, I think, or something like that, where it's just a little beach community with another artist, and we were looking at paintings, and we were just going, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Wow, oh, look at how they did that with the brush strokes, and the gallery said, you guys are artists, right? You wanna know what sells? This has been on the wall for a year and a half. Let me show you what sells. So they took them in the room with these trite little windmills, and they were bad. But he says, I can't keep these in stock. So who knows what people like, and if you can find those people that, my work was, I didn't really do much of it at all for the value of the art itself. It was just for the value of doing it. My son helped me at the last Comic-Con to just kind of man the booth, and he was just like, wow, this is your legacy. Your whole life was creating the stuff that you have on the wall. that's really cool. You know, I've got a friend who basically could buy Mitt Romney, and he said, I spend my whole days trying to get people to spend money they really shouldn't. I wished I could do something that had some value. I mean, there is no value. So, but for me, creating art has value. And this is one of the reasons why I like traditional art as opposed to digital. I still like digital, but okay, all I did was move pixels around. I turn it off and it's gone. But this represents a month of my life. That means something to me. So, and that's why I keep doing it. I don't know any artist that really does it for the money. If we're lucky, we can make some money, and a few. I look at it about like golfing or acting. There's a few guys that make a stupid amount of money. Everybody else just kind of makes enough to get by, and everybody else is just a hobbyist. And that's kind of what it's become for many. But I was one of those weirdos that was like, I can't do anything else. If I had to work at a corporate office, I'd be in jail for murder. I can't sit in meetings with people saying, yes, that's good enough. That's really terrible. Let's make a lot of them and sell them for cheap. And I can't do it. I can't do it. So, I mean, this is the only thing I do odd things, and hopefully people show up every once in a while and who like the odd things I do. So I'm happy to share. So, whatever you guys, maybe talk to me. Anything else you want to hear? Come up and look at the originals as close as you want. I won't get after you. But I did not have the guts to go to the art center in LA. I probably should have, but they gave me a 4-year art scholarship, and I thought, I don't have to pay for it. So I did, and I don't regret it because they were great painters. They taught me how to draw the figure, draw and paint the figure. That's what I needed. It was just after that. It was Paul Davis. Yes. Yeah, he and Sam Wilson, I think they gave them, after I graduated, I think they gave them a special award for tolerating me. Because it's like, I didn't care. And they were like, what's your idea? And I was like, I don't care. I just want to paint something and have it look cool, and if it looks like Sean Connery, yes! And they put up with me. But they taught me how to do the basics, but the other stuff, I had my own sense of grit. This is what psychologists are saying now, is what makes for the success in the Marines, like special forces, guys that are gonna say, I will not be knocked down. I don't care how hard you hit me, I will get back up. And I don't know that you can teach that, but I mean, there's a certain element of that. I will choose when I lose. I will be beaten many, many times, but I will choose when I lose. And you lose a lot. You win a few, and hopefully you make some friends along the way that don't mind the same stuff you do. But anyway, you guys are. Is this the part where you have to go anesthetize everyone? Maybe you need to anesthetize me.
Far from it.